Oh, hi. Fancy meeting you here. It must be time for another brilliant Outwit Outlast Survivor 49 podcast. Episode 8, if I'm not misremembering. Is it true?
It is true. The rumors are true. It's Survivor 49, episode 8.
This is amazing. I'm so glad to see you. It's so lucky that we both showed up for this podcast at the same time.
What
I
happenstance?
know. I won't call it luck because we had plenty of that in this episode of Survivor, but we'll get to it. Shall we dive in?
Yeah, let's go for
Let's
it.
go for it. All right. We began the episode with the fallout from the previous night's blindside vote, and it was very calm for a blindside that big. Everybody was pretty calm, and immediately Savannah and Riz and Blue Sophie, Mastermind Sophie, went into damage control.
Yeah, Mastermind no more. She was bamboozled this
A
episode.
little bamboozled. I think she recovered,
Yeah.
but that was a tough blindside. They pulled it off really well.
Yeah, I think so.
Props to everybody, and they seemed to make peace. And in a weird way, I thought that Jawan was a little almost apologetic about about the blind side. Like he was the one that needed to do damage control, which is silly. Say,
Yeah, Rizzo even said to him, "You don't need to do damage control with me." And like he was right. Like it seemed like a kind thing to say, but he was just correct.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So we did learn a few things. Savannah was the only one that seemed visibly irritated, angry, competitive player that she is. But she also held her emotions in check. Played the damage control game to the best of her abilities, which seemed to be pretty considerable. And later, when she was opening up to Steven, it looked like she was changing her gameplay a little bit. So that was good.
Yeah.
Um, there was an idol hunt, and Christina found the idol, which is terrific. Good job.
Yeah, we love more than 5 seconds of screen time for Christina.
Such an interesting backstory that we've gotten snippets of, but I still feel like I'm waiting to spend a lot of quality time with Christina. Maybe that'll come up soon because as somebody with
Maybe.
an idol has a lot of power in the game. Alex and Steven were in on it. They were calling it a
Yeah,
defensive idol search,
defensive idol search, yeah.
which is silly. Oh, it's okay that we're doing this because it's just defensive. you know,
Yeah, I don't really want this idol for
you know.
myself, you guys. I just don't want Savannah to get it.
Right.
Like, okay, maybe just go on individual idol hunts and admit to yourselves that you want an offensive idol. But,
Although I've been thinking about this, and I think maybe all idol hunts are defensive because you're trying to keep the idol away from other players. That's the only reason you want the idol.
no, you want the idol so you can play the idol for yourself.
Well,
Like Rizzo has this idol and he continues to want it because he wants to block votes against him. And if you play an idol really well, it's super offensive because everybody votes for you. You play an idol, you pick who goes home. Like that's like the only way that you can be truly offensive in Survivor.
I guess so. I just know that if anybody I know gets on Survivor, I'm going to advise them to justify their early idol hunting by saying, "Oh, it's just a defensive thing, guys. I just want to make sure that this doesn't fall into the hands of another tribe somehow."
I,
Some in
yeah.
some in,
Another alliance might, I don't know how another tribe's gonna like hop over to your, it's gonna be like in early seasons of Survivor where they'd accidentally stumble across each other's camps and then like search for an idol
I'll
there.
never forget Ozzy coming out of the underbrush in that season. What? You're here? Oh my
Who would have
gosh.
known there were other people living out here?
No. It is still making me want that overhead map. So that was
Yeah.
terrific. And Alex's confessional afterwards was a little telling because he is more of a cutthroat than I would have guessed, although he's had a little glimmers of it. This time he was
Yeah.
just like, so happy that Christina's going to use this for all of us. And if I need an advantage, I'll just throw her under the bus and tell people that she's got it. Like,
Yeah.
whoa, that's pretty calculating, strategic thinking, which is appropriate. But I haven't
Yeah.
seen.
No, it was a very cutthroat way of saying something that is pretty basic in Survivor, I think, which is that having more information can benefit you in multiple ways,
Yeah,
depending on how you use it.
for sure.
Not a great sign for Christina that despite her being the one who got the idol, we heard way more about finding the idol from both Alex and Steven in that
I
segment.
know.
But
I know. I mean, I don't know what the edit is telling us, and I don't want to put too much stock in that, but it does seem strange that
yeah,
that was the way that shook out. We got a lot of this was sort of a Savannah episode, and we got her um, uh, opening up and expressing a lot of vulnerability about that vote, and she did that in a confessional, and she also then took the opportunity to tell at least Stephen in a moment by the campfire or in camp, and they intercut those confessions.
she was telling him about like sort of a traumatic backstory where she had this really difficult workplace where everyone iced her out and she felt so alone. And yeah, it was just one of many examples this season of people sharing how much Survivor has brought up feelings from their past about being left out, which just makes it so much clearer how much like Savannah and Sage have in common, despite the fact that they take that feeling and it manifests, I think, in very different gameplay and emotions and sort of reactions to situations.
Yeah, I can't remember a season where so many different players have talked about the ways that peer encounters or work encounters, adolescent or post adolescent encounters really shaped, were traumatic and really shaped who they became. Or were, it's a very common experience, but I don't remember seeing it come up a lot on Survivor seasons past. What what does Amanda say on Savannah this episode?
It was a good Savannah episode. There was a lot of her in this episode. And I think it would be hard to talk about her episode without talking a little bit about the challenge. Um,
Sure.
so just in terms of the challenge, she won, and it was a very powerful win. And there's this shot of her on a boat making sort of a surprise entrance, and she's waving like the queen, and she looks so
Yeah.
happy. I think they've done a lot to portray Savannah as sort of a villain this season, with like all of these edits left in of her being irritated with Juan, and the edit of her slaughtering the chickens so brutally and gleefully. There've just been a lot of moments that they give us of Savannah being a villain, so it was really nice to see this moment of her being very vulnerable. Like, I think they're giving her a balanced edit.
Mhm.
Like, I don't feel like we're being told to root for or against her necessarily. Like, I think that yeah, we're getting a lot of sides of her and she's interesting and I do find myself rooting for her. She's so gleeful when she screws people over and it's really fun to watch. But she's clearly a person who has been hurt before and who like covers that up with this really tough exterior. And I'm like fascinated by her. She's certainly not a perfect person, but I like watching her.
Yeah, me too. She's playing hard. I don't know why that has to be the villain edit, but it does. Maybe because she's a woman in the game, playing kind of hard and being openly angry. Sometimes, somehow that the
Yeah.
only way the only way we can cope with that is by calling it a villain edit, or something. We do it. We internalize that narrative a little bit ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, yeah, if she was Tony, we would just say, "Oh, that's hard gameplay."
I don't know.
from them.
To me, Tony's a villain. Tony on Kagayana is a villain. I don't think that we're supposed to watch Tony and think that's a great guy,
Maybe
like
not a
who's just trying really
guy,
hard.
but we certainly did. You root for him or not? Well, I couldn't root for
No,
him when he betrayed um,
Sarah.
Sarah. That was bad.
Yeah. No, I was a 13-year-old girl watching that season, and there is no one I hated more than
He was,
Tony. It made me so angry, and I just didn't like watching men win.
yeah. Well, that's
But especially not
new
Tony.
era Survivor has been much kinder to you. It
Yes.
is making up for some of the horrible experiences that young Amanda had watching Survivor.
Yeah, and to be clear, I did like watching Tony win on Winners at War. I think he played a really good game that
Yeah.
time. But anyways, we're here to talk about Survivor
Yeah, and we're here to
49.
talk about Savannah, who did have a great episode. Actually, she had two waves that live in my memory. One is when the boat was just going by her tribe, and they're like, "What is happening?" And she just waved, like like, "See,
Yeah.
have fun storming the castle." Uh,
I mean, I thought it was funny how they were shouting after her, "What's happening?" Like as if she could just shout back, "Oh, I'm just heading over to this other beach because I found this advantage for myself that like what she's gonna shout instructions to
I
you?
know,
Like she has nothing to do but wave."
I know, and that wave coming in was perfect. It was. I loved it too.
She was eating it up. It was amazing. I think she's gonna have a lot of fun for the next couple episodes,
She,
is my prediction.
yeah, well,
There's a way that you can have fun on the show when you have nothing to lose,
yeah,
or like when you've like taken your first big hit that I think you can't before you take a hit.
that's true. I think you're right. It'll be interesting to watch that. Although now they're so gleeful about the outcome and the voting situation, especially that they do feel like they're back on top and not playing
Yeah,
with abandon from the bottom.
yeah.
But we'll get to that.
Um, yeah, I think the last thing I'd say about Savannah and about the pre-challenge stuff, is that the Savannah Sage dynamic was
Yeah,
interesting, and I still don't really know like who I agree. Like they're telling sort of different versions of the same story. I understand what both of them are saying. I think Sage opened up to Sophie about how she feels like Savannah has been a mean girl to her, which is a very interesting sort of. I don't think that's a totally non-strategic thing to do. Like I think she's trying to build a bond with Sophie by sort of coming across as a victim and by making Savannah, who is Sophie's current closest ally, seem like just a person that she shouldn't like as much, which is interesting. I feel like there were a lot of strategic things that Sage could have said to Sophie in that moment, and she did not choose to say them. But what she did say was sort of like I think she could have said a lot of logical and emotionless things like I'm excited to work with you. I really mean it. I think you're a number for me and like Savannah is down on the numbers, but she didn't say any of that. She said Savannah has been a mean girl to me. She named the chickens and then killed them and said that that would make me sad. Which I mean, yeah, like I don't mean to diminish that. It probably did make Sage sad and Savannah was probably not being very thoughtful. But um I don't know. I think Savannah also said something really interesting in that episode, which is that you can't paint yourself as the victim if you're the one who has the knife and is doing all the stabbing.
yes,
And
yeah,
it is true that in the narrative of Savannah and Sage right now, Sage is painting herself as a victim of Savannah personally, but game-wise, the only one who has taken shots at the other is Sage, and she has taken
yeah,
several.
that's true. Yeah, and I feel like Sage's maybe, I don't know how calculated some of those moves are. I can't tell.
Can't tell.
But they're certainly effective, and they are playing a personal game, pretty well. I was surprised later when she told, was it, did she tell MC what Sophie had said?
MC told Joanne what Sophie had told her,
Yes.
and Joanne told Sage,
Oh,
and
yeah,
Sage told Sophie.
that's right.
It was like a whole little cycle,
Thank you.
made like a perfect circle.
Yeah, that surprised me that
But
Sage would go back to Sophie and tell her what was going on. Uh,
Yeah, everyone is being open with each other in ways that surprise me.
Yeah, yeah. It's a puzzling sort of game, really. The level of transparency seems to be much higher. People are keeping their secrets, but
I will say it's a good season to have a knowledge is power that you're not telling anyone about. Sophie is killing it with that.
yeah,
Blue Sophie is killing it with that because everybody has been so open about idols this season. Being in a position where you could use that to your advantage, perfect.
yeah. After the challenge, um, I like the fact that the advantages and the idols are just so much more direct this episode. Like no, Christina didn't have to work very hard. She just has them.
Yeah,
Like I like that. I appreciate that. And I thought that Savannah's advantage was actually an extremely good one. Sometimes advantages are kind of meh, lukewarm, or they'll give you a leg up on this one little challenge. But I thought this was a huge, like, game changing advantage for somebody to get. I can't
yeah,
believe that. But Savannah earned it. There's
yeah.
luck, and then but you can't be in the position to get the luck if you're not playing at a high level.
Yeah, I agree. I think that like there's always luck on Survivor, but like using your luck to your advantage is so important. And like being able to counter unlucky situations also really important. I guess to dive into the challenge, Savannah won and she got this advantage from it because it was the worst twist in the new era besides maybe fire making, but that precedes the new era. Hate fire making.
Yeah,
But it was that challenge where they have 10 people now and they split into teams of five to do the immunity challenge. And the team with a person who lasted the longest, everyone was safe, and the other five went to tribal council alone and voted. And this is something they've been doing. The only reason it was a little different this time, in the past, they've gone to two separate tribal councils as two different tribes or like temporary tribes. They're not unmerged. But this time, only one tribe went to tribal council, and I think it was just because Jake got injured out of the game and
yeah,
they had to adapt, so they didn't send two people home in one episode this time. But it did create an interesting dynamic, and it is annoying to watch people compete for individual immunity, and none of them like actually gets the typical individual immunity. Like everyone on the losing five was vulnerable, and Sophie or Savannah won on the winning side, and she didn't, I mean, she kind of got individual immunity, but it was sort of complicated because of her advantage, which was that she did, after all, get to go with the other tribe to tribal council, and she could either vote, and she was safe, she had the individual immunity necklace, and she could either vote or she could bank that vote for a later date, which I think is a really fun way to do that. Like, I think they might have improved this advantage, or they maybe adjusted it from something else, because I have to assume that they improved this change to the challenge where only one of the two smaller groups goes to tribal. But I thought it was a really fun advantage, and I think an extra vote in the position that they're in right now actually could make a
yeah.
difference. And nobody knows about it because Savannah did a really good job of pretending that the whole advantage was just that she got to be there at all.
I agree. I think this season is doing a nice correction, or somebody is listening to some of the feedback from fans. The the journeys and the advantages had gotten a little stale and predictable,
Yeah.
and this season,
No, and now they're
mm,
they're prompting interesting
right?
decisions.
I agree. So I hate the way that luck affects the outcome so dramatically. It's like playing chess and suddenly somebody says, "Oh, by the way, your rook can now also move like a bishop." Like, oh, well, that doesn't seem fair. Like, you had my
Yeah.
whole strategy mapped out, and now you're telling me that the pieces don't play the same way anymore. That doesn't seem right. But But
Yeah, like you have a strategy based on the 10 people that are there, and then all of a sudden you're with a random 5 again. And I get that it's sort of not that different from the tribe phase of the game. The problem is that we've merged. I don't want to watch the tribe phase of the game anymore.
I have a feeling that they are probably doing some of this to avoid the sort of boring outcome when you have such a huge majority picking off the members of a minority, which is probably they, these twists don't necessarily mean that that's going to get upended. It could have been people in the supermajority that won the advantages and didn't go to tribal tonight. You know, it could have worked
Yeah.
out that way. Um, so I don't feel like it's, production weighting it in a certain way, but it certainly increases the likelihood that the status quo won't play out in a sort of predictable way, which you want. You like that, Amanda. You don't like the obvious votes.
No, of course I don't. No one
No,
does.
they're
It's boring.
yeah, they're frustrating because there's a point in every game when that minority could figure out a way to flip the tables if they could just recruit one player, and they don't ever do it. They can't ever do it. But we're not going to have that
Yeah.
this game.
No, and I will say you're right that like I'm really frustrated by this random draw thing, but it did make this episode potentially more interesting than the alternative, which would have just been all 10 of them voting. But it's like
Hmm.
7-3, and it felt like it was pretty easy for Blue Sophie to jump ship, so Rizzo's idol might not have even mattered. So this was a very interesting and very different shakeup, and I think that's
Yeah,
good. But it does drive me crazy when they don't just like let them be merged and compete for individual immunity. Because again, like your safety in the game depends a lot on other people instead of just on. I mean, Savannah guaranteed her own safety. So, like, I think that was more like an
yeah,
individual immunity
yeah,
challenge. But I just don't like this, like, random draw. It just bothers me. And
yeah,
it really screwed over the person who went home this episode.
yeah,
So the challenge ended with MC, Yellow Sophie, Rizzo, Jawan, and Sage going to a tribal council. And that was an interesting group.
yeah. Do you want to talk about the
Yeah, I guess I've
pre-tribal wrangling before Savannah got there, and then after, because that made a huge difference.
it did, and it shouldn't
No,
have.
it really shouldn't have.
Yeah, they were on a path. It might have worked. They thought that they should blindside Rizzo and send him home with an idol in his pocket, which I thought was risky because I thought he should have looked around him and seen that obviously he should play his idol tonight based on the way last tribal went. But Rizzo is an optimistic man. I learned this episode, the whole episode after what should have been the most devastating thing that's happened to him in the game thus far. He was like, well, these are the silver linings, and this is why I'm not going to play my idol, even though I'm in a situation where I clearly should play my idol.
Okay. Yeah.
But it worked for him.
So I mentioned to you in another context that I thought that this episode, for me, solidified my view of Rizzo as a kind of as a I think a game changer thinker. All right. So here's the first way that he did it. Because he didn't think the way that most of us think, which is I'm in trouble, I got to play my idol. What he said was whether I go out 10th or 4th, it doesn't really matter. But this idol could serve me much better at 4 than 10, or whatever. So it's worth the risk. And I think he's absolutely right. When you think about it that way, instead of thinking nobody wants to go home with an idol in their pocket, which is what everybody says, yes, you do. If the idol is going to be more powerful at 4 than at 10, yes, you do.
No, I do know what you mean, and I think you're right that if you want to win Survivor, you have to play big and you have to take risks. I do think that you also have to be rational. And at first, I thought he was being pretty irrational. So they had this plan to convince Rizzo that they were voting Sophie out, but it fell apart so dramatically. And I kind of thought that people were like, I just think that it fell apart in such weird and unexpected ways. Like, at first, I thought it was crazy of Sophie to throw her own name out as a backup
Oh,
in a plan where someone is maybe going to play an idol. Like, why would you want to be the one vote as a backup? And then she said, and then I'm going to secretly vote for Jawan just in case Rizzo plays his idol. And I was like, okay, I'm understanding the plan a little more. She did think this through. What no one, I think, could have predicted was that MC would tell Jawan that. I think MC should have just said, I don't want Jawan to be the backup vote, and talked about it with her ally, Sophie. And instead, she like wanted to build this trust with Jawan by telling him this information. But obviously, that's going to make Jawan not want to stick with this plan, and it is in MC's best interest to have this plan go through the way that it was originally laid out. I just feel like she didn't make that logical connection. Like, it felt like she was playing like minute to minute in that moment.
mm,
Like, she was just like, this is an opportunity for me to build trust with Juwan. She didn't think for a second like what it would actually do to the vote.
yeah. It should have been an easy vote.
Yeah, it should have
All of
been.
those people wanted Riz out, right? And
Yeah.
that's the best move for all of those people, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Or you flush the
Mm-hmm.
idol. Either way, that's still the best possible thing. And if they knew how to read him, they would have known that he's not going to play his idol. So they wouldn't have had to worry about it too much because
Yeah.
he's already threatened to play it and not. I feel like
Yeah.
that is a gamble, but but a calculated risk.
Yeah, and that's why you have a backup plan.
Yeah,
Like, that's, I get why Sophie, Yellow Sophie, had this backup plan. I think it was wise to. I think everybody should have had a backup plan if they thought that their vote would be the backup vote. But, like, I don't think that they should have let the fear that their plan wouldn't work stop them from doing it at all. Because then it just snowballed into like suddenly everyone was acting like they didn't have any power. And I think what really exacerbated that was when Savannah came up onto this beach waving like the
yeah,
queen, with her advantage that she got to participate. But here's the thing, they all freaked out about that because it introduced a new element of uncertainty, and they were all already scrambling a little bit about this backup vote situation. But the numbers were still 4-2. Like, it shouldn't have made that much of a difference.
yeah,
I get that it changes the back, like, it makes the backup vote thing a little more important because you can't just throw one rogue vote onto someone else. Like, if you're the backup or if you're the one that Rizzo and Savannah choose, you are going home because you can't split the vote, really. But I just think that everybody freaked out and like acted like they didn't have any agency in the game.
So that's where I think the alliance thing is perplexing. Why wasn't Sage's name the name that they landed on? Sage and Joanne are clearly a duo. They've clearly been running the game, sort of. Why didn't Sophie and MC say, let's put our vote on Sage? You know?
Yeah, because I get maybe Sophie has a reason she likes Sage more than Joanne as that backup, but what MC should have done is say, I like Joanne. I maybe don't want another black person as one of
Right.
the first couple members of this jury. Let's talk about it
Yeah.
and put Sage down instead. Like, that could have been a conversation between them. They didn't need to involve Joanne and
Yeah.
Sage.
I would have been interested to see how that would have landed with Sophie too.
Yeah, well, because Sophie seems reasonable and strategic to me, and I
Yeah,
think she would have been okay with that,
yeah.
but it's hard to know. It seems like there wasn't a ton of trust between MC and Sophie to begin with.
That's that that so there's two things there. First, the most important thing about MC's thinking is something that I didn't know what was being said in all the whispering, so I broke my no press survivor rule and looked it up. And MC was doing making she had been making that argument pre-tribal, but she was touching base with Joanne and making sure that that plan was still going to happen. And Joanne said no. And then she was scrambling around a little bit to try and throw some votes a different way.
Mm.
And her thinking was just that she didn't want another season where the first members of the jury were people of color. Over and over again, we see these seasons of Survivor where that's the pattern. You know, two, three, four players of color in a row voted out onto the jury. It's those players may have reasons or justifications for their votes that they think has nothing to do with race, but the pattern suggests otherwise. You know, and certainly MC wanted to stop that pattern, right? So that's what was really motivating her in her strategizing, which is in some ways that wasn't just about her. You know, that was about a bigger political and social issue in the game that needs attention. Former players of color have caucused and lobbied for change in the past, and I think that the show has listened and made some changes. But still, I think that the persistence of that pattern suggests that that work is not done, and maybe should never end. You know, maybe it's something,
Yeah.
you know, needs continued self-examination.
No, I think that's right. And it makes me a little sad knowing that it was something that she was saying at Tribal that
Right.
they elected not to put it into the edit.
Right.
Like, I think it's something that a lot of people watching Survivor have been noticing. Like, the first couple members of the jury for the last several seasons have been people of color. It's consistent. It's frustrating, and it's frustrating to me that they didn't acknowledge that in the show. Like, from what you're saying, it sounds like it was a big part of MC's thinking, and it explains a gap in the narrative to me. Like, MC reacted really strongly to Joanne's name being the backup and made what seemed like a really irrational decision because of it. But if that irrational decision was clearly coming from this place of, I just really don't want another person of color sitting there on that
Right.
jury, then like that's a useful part of the narrative for me as a viewer, like regardless of whether it's, I mean, it's important to be calling attention to this
Yeah.
issue, but like regardless, it's an important part of the narrative of the episode. So that's frustrating to me that they didn't um, include that, especially given that it ended with MC, a person of color, being voted out and sitting on the jury.
Right.
So I think that like to me, that's kind of the narrative of the end of that episode, and maybe it didn't fit in well with like the Rizzo Savannah success narrative. I don't know. It doesn't quite sit right with me. I know they don't love to include the whispered conversations in Tribal, but like, I don't know. You're telling me there's not a single confessional where MC's talking about the fact that she doesn't want another black person sitting on the jury right now?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, come on. I think it's not like that strategizing happened at the moment at Tribal. It was clearly part of the conversation, but we were excluded from that
Yeah.
conversation. I'm a little disappointed in the edit, and I a little bit unclear as to why those decisions were being made. But the funny thing about that is that you can also, even as we observe that seemingly consistent pattern, we can also hold Rizzo's observation about MC as a kind of a true thing too. I thought he was very insightful to say, I look at MC and I see all of these connections to all these different players, and I look at Sophie and I see none. You know, like that's a person, one person who doesn't have a lot of strong connections or alliances. So why wouldn't I want to vote out the person that had all of that connection and leave the easy vote out, the solo solitary player for next time or the time after that? It's good
Yeah.
gameplay,
I
you know.
He was right. And this is where it's sort of frustrating, and I don't know, where you can sort of hold multiple things. Like, I'm definitely not saying this vote out was racist.
Right.
And that's sort of the issue is that, like, MC's going to have to sit there wondering, like, how much race
Yeah.
played a role in it
Yeah.
and how much it was playing in everyone's mind. Because it was not, like, obviously a racist vote out, because I do think it was a strategically smart decision by Rizzo and Savannah. I think they picked the right person to vote for, and they miraculously worked their way from the bottom to vote that person out. And I mean, that does deserve props still. Like, as a
Mm.
survivor move, I think it was the right move by them because they were right. And they used information in a really interesting way. Savannah was sitting at this reward after she won the challenge and before she switched to the beach that was going to tribal council. And they were all talking like, probably Yellow Sophie's gonna go. Like, they were really
Yeah.
not keeping their guard up around Savannah, probably because they thought it wouldn't be relevant, which was foolish. And she used that information. And she realized that Yellow Sophie is very much on the bottom of their
Uh,
tribe, and none of them are even thinking about the fact that MC could go because they all know that MC is really central to their group. And
right.
that is really useful information for Savannah and
Yeah.
Rizzo. And they used it in a really smart way by saying MC's got, like, yeah, this web of connections, and Sophie,
Yeah.
Yellow Sophie, is less connected, and it is better for us to keep around someone who's less connected than someone who's really central to this alliance that we are trying to take down. So I do think, like, I think they played that well. And the thing that I wrote down in my notes was that they did not play like they were on the
Right.
bottom. They were leading conversations. Rizzo was like, I'm not going to play my idol.
Yeah.
Savannah came in there as if she had all the power in the world. And Sage and Joanne and Sophie and MC just kind of folded.
Yeah.
And they were like, it seems like now the vote is between MC and Sophie, and there's nothing we can do about it.
No.
Like, Sophie was sitting on that beach trying to not tell MC that she was voting for her
No.
tonight because she thought that there was just no way around it. And to me, I mean, to me, it feels like the decision rested with Sage and Joanne. But Sage and Joanne don't want to work with Rizzo, and they don't want to work with Savannah. And I don't know why they just sort of caved and went with that way of voting instead of sticking with their guns. Rizzo was not playing his idol. Just vote Rizzo out. To me, that's like an easy choice. And I don't know if this vote was a win for Rizzo or like a loss for everybody else, but I couldn't believe that it worked as well as it did for them.
The Sage and Jawan failure to vote for Rizzo is the huge blunder of the season, really.
Hmm.
If Rizzo didn't play his idol, he would probably go home, or at least it would go down to a tie, maybe. Well,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have if they had anyway. If he did play his idol, it's flushed, and then you know, MC or Sophie goes home, and you weren't that close to them anyway.
Yeah.
Because you're former Uli. So
Yeah.
that they were in the perfect position to get rid of somebody that was, but they were in the perfect position to get rid of like enemy number one, and they just didn't do it. I don't know why.
And I'm not even sure that the blunder was letting Rizzo stay in the game and voting out MC, but I do think that a huge blunder was letting Rizzo stay in the game with his idol.
Yeah.
Because they were, again, in such an easy position where they can use
Yes.
the information they have to convince Rizzo to either play his, like if they just all four vote Rizzo, don't hide it very well. Either Rizzo goes home and looks like kind of an idiot with an idol in his
Yes.
pocket, or Rizzo plays his idol and yeah, someone that you're not that well aligned with, Sophie, goes home. That's the way to play the middle. Like, that's what Joanne and Sage should be
Right.
doing. And I don't know why they're just like, "Ah, okay, now I guess we have to vote with these people."
Right.
I don't know who would have been better for them to keep in the game. There's an argument that it would have been better to keep Rizzo in the game without an idol because he and Savannah and Blue Sophie still don't have a lot of power in that scenario.
Mm.
Um, but I don't think that they did the right thing, certainly.
No. It's, I had that feeling of I just couldn't believe that Rizzo and Savannah were bluffing so well that everybody folded, you know, and then
Yeah.
got distracted by the sort of Sophie side vote. Um, it should have been a distraction. It should have been easy to fix, but they just let it blow up the whole vote.
Yeah.
So
No, Rizzo and Savannah were just playing as if they had a lot more power than they did, and I think it just sort of confused everybody into doing what they wanted. I don't
I
know.
can't explain it either. It was startling. It was quite a performance, really. I mean, and you talking about Rizzo's optimism, but I feel like in a weird way, it's like a superpower. Like it's confidence. It's not optimism. It's confidence. Um,
Maybe, I mean, we certainly know that he has that. A man who calls himself Rizgod, Riz God. We don't have to question whether he has
I don't know.
confidence, I think.
Maybe he's just being ironic when he does that. He doesn't read. He doesn't
Oh,
read that way, but I don't know. I can't figure him out. Really, stuff like that annoys
no.
me. But then twice this episode, I wrote down he sees the game really well.
Yeah.
Like he just sees the game with a clarity that I appreciate. The way that he saw the webs of connection. I really appreciated that. And what was the other thing I was so? Oh yeah, the way he thought about the idol, 10th place or fourth place, whatever. That's not winning. You know, you are not sold by that, but I was like, that's brilliant. That's the way to
I
play Survivor if you want to win.
I understand it, but I think that I just think you have to be careful with that because you could say that with any decision, like, and then you end up hanging on to like all these advantages, and like, there's a right time to play every advantage. Like, if you're certain you're gonna go out 10th with this idol in your pocket, wait till ninth and see what happens. Maybe you'll win individual immunity. Like, I just think, I agree with you that I think he made the right decision this time. The confidence was well placed. He was optimistic in the right way, and he took the right risk. But I think that it's all about taking the right risk. And I think sometimes like you can't take that risk. Like I get that you want to make it to win Survivor, but I think it's better for your career, like Geoff said last episode, for you to
Yeah.
last an additional week. And I think it's better for your game a lot of the time.
I just I'd never heard somebody so persuasively make the argument that it's better not to play week to week. You contrast his thinking about the idol with MC's thinking about the idol, and he's playing. He's seeing not week to week. He's really seeing the arc of the last, and he's even saying things like Sophie's not going to win every challenge. You know,
No, and he's right about
yeah,
that. No, that's true. Like, I do think, I mean, everybody really jumped onto the Sophie's a physical threat train because she did well in two challenges. She only won one of
right,
them.
right.
Feels very dramatic to me. And I agree, to be clear, that everybody should be trying to focus on the long game, but I do think there are situations in Survivor where you are going to be voted out, and it's not worth it to try to play this long game and have it collapse on you. Last season, Bianca lost her vote, wasn't sure if she should tell Cedric, her new alliance, about it. She decided to, and he voted her out because of it. And she decided to tell him because she was trying to play the long game and she was trying to build connections and make it much further in the game. But she was like a week away from the merge.
Mm,
Like, I think she should have just been playing
yeah,
week to week in that instance, and she should have not told him, maybe lost a little bit of trust with him, but now we're merged and there's a whole new dynamic and who knows what's going on, and you have old allies around you. Like I think that it really is so situational, and like playing the long game this time worked really well for Rizzo, and I think it's usually better to play the long game. And I totally get that, like, whether you go out 10th or 4th, like, you got to stay in the game and you got to like you want to win. I get that. But I do think that like sometimes the best way to get to winning is to be focused on how do I make it to another week when cuz so much of Survivor is luck that like if you're making it to a next week, who knows what's going to happen next week. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
If those
So,
four had stuck to their guns and not gotten freaked out by the possibility that he was going to play his idol, he would be gone. He would be gone. He
yeah.
would be gone. And if they had presented it strongly, like, hey, we're voting for Riz, no questions asked, to flush his idol. Um, uh, would he have played his idol? Do you think?
If it seemed like he really needed, he might have. I do think he reads people pretty well, so I do think it's possible that like there's a world in which he would have played that idol and he would have seen that like that was his only way of staying in the game this week. It's hard to tell. Like, you know, we see it edited together in
Yeah,
a way where it makes it seem very much like he wasn't going to play it no matter what, but I'm not sure.
yeah.
But I think that was a very realistic situation that you just described, and then he would have just been a guy who went home 10th and we wouldn't have thought of him as this guy who either goes home
That's
at
true.
10 or if he'd stayed in the game, he definitely would have won. You know, I'm not even like I don't feel that confident that he's going to win now that he's still in it. I think he might be fourth.
I think he might be fourth.
And I think it will matter, by the way. Like, I think that if Rizzo gets to stay in the game until four, that's the reason he's potentially going on Survivor 50.
Yeah.
Like I do think that 10th versus fourth
Yeah,
matters.
well, okay, that's fair. That's fair. It matters for other people. Like him going home fourth means that the chances of Savannah or Sophie or somebody else, I don't know who, winning are even bigger. I
Yeah.
don't know who the fourth person would be. They've got those three, they're very tight, but who's the fourth person?
I don't know. Maybe they'll pull in Yellow Sophie.
Maybe it's Steven. Oh, no, I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway,
I have no idea who's going to make it to the end of this
I don't
game,
either.
to be
I don't
honest.
either. It could go so many different
I
ways.
don't think that Christina's going to win based on her edit, but she could be third.
Well, you're right, actually. That's the kind of edit that third place winners or people get a lot.
Yeah,
I hope she does something really amazing. I
me too. I really like her.
I like
Um,
this whole cast. Really,
yeah,
nobody's irritating me the way that they have in some seasons past, and even the quote
no,
unquote villains are faceted and well rounded, and even I think Sage is a bigger villain edit than Savannah, but I'm rooting for
I don't think
Sage.
it's a villain
You
edit.
don't?
I think everyone loves Sage, and if it was a true villain edit, not everybody. I mean, like the internet likes
Yeah,
Sage a
that's true.
lot. I don't know. Maybe we're building up to an eventual villain edit. Maybe the producers thought they were building a villain edit, but I just think we got too much too early on about her. Like, the Savannah vulnerability came very late, and it came after we've made these sort of assumptions about her being kind of cutthroat and mean.
Hmm.
But I think that the Sage edit started with vulnerability and now has
Oh,
turned into cutthroat.
right.
And I think that that's a progression that builds her up as an underdog, whereas
True.
Savannah's is a progression that builds her up as sort of this like cutthroat person who has fallen and now will maybe build herself up and maybe in a like a vengeful way and she's sort of a villain. I'm not sure anyone's getting a true. I don't think anyone's getting a true villain edit, but I do think Savannah, people are talking about her having crazy eyes a lot more than they're talking about anyone else having crazy eyes.
Well,
Certainly, no one has mentioned a man having crazy eyes this season.
I don't think I'm talking about the men of this season very much, really. Um,
No. Although I think Steven is playing a really good game.
he's very under the radar right now, which is interesting. Like, I think there are some
Yeah.
players who, in this midpoint of the game, they suddenly lay low and they wait.
Which is totally what they, yeah.
Yeah, and he might be doing that.
Yeah, he might. Which would be the right thing for him to do. I think he's
Yeah,
positioned himself well. I think he has the kind of clout that later on he could be making big moves and he could be pulling people in. I don't know. This is kind of anyone's game
Mhm.
at this point. I'm excited for next week. Is there anything else you wanted to say about this week before we get into the next time on and all of that?
I can't remember the next time on. I think I might have missed it. What was it?
Um,
Oh no,
oh,
I do
I
remember. I
certainly,
do remember. I remember Riz and Blue Sophie and Savannah saying, "Now we have all the power."
yeah, we are the most powerful trio in this
Yeah,
game. I just think there's the possibility for some exciting. I do love it when they play their silly little advantages and idols and things. I love to see them play with what they
yeah,
have. So I think we might get some of that next episode, or they're just teasing us because the next time on is so rarely indicative of the actual stuff that I'm focused on in that episode.
yeah. Very rare. Um, well, that would be nice. I think we might not see that for a couple episodes, and I'm
Maybe
still
not.
waiting for Blue Sophie to turn on them. It would,
Feels like she's got to at some point. And if
yeah,
she wants to win, I think she's got to at some
yeah.
point.
I think she's ready to do it. I just,
I don't think now's the
I
time.
agree. It's not the time because who would she have left? Alex, maybe, but Alex doesn't seem to have taken her olive branch of, we're swing vote solidarity, come over to Uli. He was not really embracing the connection that they could have forged, which I think
No,
she was
although,
offering.
yeah, but what could he have done? Because I think that he knew which vote was going to be the majority. He knew that he wanted to stay on that side. And she came into that conversation pretty strongly, like, I think you should come over to my side. I think
Right.
if he had given her any information, if he had warned her about the vote, she would have told people they had
That's true.
idols. So I think there was kind of. I think they'll continue to work together at least a little bit, but I think there was no clear way for him to extend that branch to her without totally jumping ship. And his relationships are with like the old
Yeah.
Ulis or the
With
old
Hina.
Hina.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I don't think they were all that close on their other tribe. It was sort of happenstance that left them the last two people.
no, it is interesting thinking what this game would be like if it was Jeremiah who had stayed and not
I wish
Alex.
it
I think that
was.
Sophie and Jeremiah would be playing together much more.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was one more thing that I wanted to say.
One more thing.
It's been a while since we've talked about fashion, but I cannot get through this episode without talking about how good Nate looked and how much I loved his hat. And not only did he have this hat, this sort of fedora, but like in a cool way, but he like doffed it to them
Oh,
as he walked by. Perfect. Everything I want from that jury member, everything I could have hoped for from Nate.
and more. Yeah, that was
I'm gonna miss him on this show. We didn't talk enough last week about what a loss Nate
a
was,
huge
but
loss.
he was great. He was grounded. He was smart. He was adaptable.
Yes,
I'm bummed that we're losing
I
him.
am too. Yeah, in fact, think he could have won if he'd been in a slightly different circumstance. I don't think he was going to go out easily.
No, I agree.
Some players you just sort of feel like they're not going to make it that deep, but I had a feeling Nate could. Um,
Yeah.
so, all right. Well, that fedora, that chapeau was awesome, and yeah, that's actually I weirdly look forward to those moments of entry the most when the new jury members come in and they're rested and they have chosen cool outfits, and I really
Yeah.
like that.
That's such a good moment. I There were a couple seasons there where they had the jury sit down first and they brought the tribes in,
Yeah.
and it's not the
Yeah.
same. I'm so glad they're back to bringing the jury in last so that everybody can turn and look. That's like one of the juiciest moments in Survivor.
Yeah, and all those players really liked him too. You could see on their faces how much they liked him, and they were smiling at him. And the doff was well received. Yeah,
Yeah.
he had some genuine bonds with people.
And that must have been a fun tribal for him to watch as a man who must have been rooting for Rizzo and Savannah.
Oh yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah,
In some ways, in other
in
ways,
some
maybe
ways.
not.
I do wonder if, yeah, the race element was on his
I
mind,
wonder that too.
because I do think disappointing.
Yeah, very.
But
So next week you're going to be in another location entirely. We might have to wait a couple of weeks before we catch up. We're going to try and do the podcast as typical. We may have some technological glitches since the old man maybe is going to have to take over the editing. Uh, but we'll figure it out. So
it'll be an
it will
adventure.
be a grand adventure.
Well, stay
Stay
tuned. Maybe there will be one very long episode of this podcast in 3 weeks. We'll
Yes,
see.
the ultimate recap. All right. Well, next week there's another episode, and we'll see what we see.
That sounds good. Thanks for everyone who's listening and watching and staying tuned. We're excited for the next episode.
Yeah. Bye. I love you.
Bye. Love you
I love
too.
you.